made possible through the inheritance of his father's army. Philip II, father of Alexander the Great and king of Macedon, was a badass. He wanted to redefine the Macedonian army after, in his younger years, being a hostage at Thebes, where he witnessed soldiers that were training year-round, not just in the summer. A Macedonian phalanx, a fancy word for a group of soldiers, was 8 men across and 16 men deep. Macedonian spears were 20 feet long instead of the usual Greek 7 feet long, meaning that not just the first row of men would have spears, but the first 5 now. Philip wanted and got professionally trained year-long soldiers who had discipline, had to march in step, which was something that didn't have to happen before because there weren't 16 rows deep before. He also took the Thessalian idea of there being a companion cavalry. Really, Greek cavalries weren't effective, but Philip's made it just like the army. Philip was known for taking his Macedonian kingdom, conquering all of Greece, but his main goal was always conquering the Empire of Persia, which he didn't get to because he died, and his son Alexander inherited the idea of conquering the Persian Empire. But before Alexander conquers Persia, he has to deal with the Greek rebellion that erupted when his father died. So he marches down to the city of Thebes, where his father was trained, and destroys the city as an example. But amidst the chaos, remember that Alexander had traditional Homeric Greek values instilled by him by the Greek philosopher who tutored him, Aristotle, meaning that he respected Greek culture and wanted to leave the house of Pindar, a famous poet, standing, which he did. And after little old Greece is taken care of right there, he heads towards the coast of Asia Minor into Persia, where he meets with the great king of Persia, Darius III, for a battle. The Battle of Granicos River in 334. And the great king of Persia is outnumbered by Alexander, so what does he do? He flees. And what does Alexander do when his opponent flees? He chases him for a whole year later until the Battle of Issus in 333. Even with the extra men that Darius had gathered, it's still no match for the Macedonian army. Alexander goes straight for the command to make the battle short, and Darius once again flees. This is where we get the famous Alexander and his horse Bucephalus mosaic from. Alexander continues conquering parts of Persia until he waits 2 years for the Battle of Gaugamela. And the same thing happens, except this time whenever Darius III is fleeing, one of his own men turn against him and kill him. The man who killed the king of Persia wanted to earn Alexander's favor, but instead Alexander killed him for robbing him of the death of Darius. Now being the new king of Persia, Alexander marches into the Babylonian capital and has all of that wealth. Alexander now has all of this. Does he care? No, he keeps going. The conquest of Arakosa, Afghanistan, happens 2 years later. There's a joke that he was the last person to successfully conquer Afghanistan. Over the span of 3 years, he marches towards India in the Battle of Hydaspes. He battles against the Indian king and his elephants and still wins. By now, Alex and his men had marched 22,500 miles by foot. That is half the distance of the entire world. He keeps traveling down the Indus until his men force him to stop. They physically cannot get richer. They want to enjoy their lives, so they head on home the dumbest way possible through the desert. Men are dropping like flies because there's no water, and Alex dies at 32 at Babylonia. Alexander the Great's conquest